know why, but I just want to start this episode so random for some reason. But you know what? I can't think of anything. Oh, here's something random. Kayla just pulled her microphone straight out of the holder.
Okay, excuse me while I get this back.
We're just going to clink around for a minute, so bear with us. While she's doing that, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friendeavor. I'm your host, Danielle.
And I'm Kayla.
Clanking around over there.
Clanking.
We are thrilled that you have decided to stop by and join us this week. Kayla, how's your week going? First week of school under your belt?
You know, it's going about how the beginning of this episode is going with me pulling the mic out and clanking it around.
That is fair. That's fair. Today was my first day of school with my new students.
Yes. And new parents.
And parents who have decided on the first day of school that their kids are not going to go to this school. Creating so much work for me before and so much work after. So here's a tip to the parents out there. Figure it out.
Before the first day of school.
Before the first day of school, please. For the sake of your teacher, figure it out. You know what? That kind of works with what we're talking about today. And I didn't even plan that.
Oh, there you go.
We are talking about present decisions, future connections. So as a fancy way of saying behaviors and attitudes and choices that you make today are going to affect you tomorrow. For example, the parents that make the decision today to not have their kid enroll after today is the first day of school made a ton of paperwork for me tomorrow. So that's just a little example.
A ripple effect,
yeah. And we won't even talk about all the work that goes into it before, but you know what? That's not why I'm here. I'm not here to hoot and holler about my job. I have a great job. And it looks like I'm going to have a really good group of kids, but that just perturbed me today. Anyway, so there's no way to know how a tiny decision, it doesn't have to be like microscopic, like, you know, brushing your teeth or you know, turning your pillow over to the cool side. Like, we're not talking that tiny decision, but seemingly like going out of your way to say hi to someone. It seems like a small decision. It doesn't have to be life-changing, but you don't know how that can have a ripple effect into the future.
Yeah.
If we can go into the ultimate guide of the life of us is Proverbs. In the Bible, Proverbs 18:15 says, "The heart of the prudent getteth knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeketh knowledge." I would not consider myself a theologian by any stretch of the imagination, but I love when the Bible, especially Proverbs, there's a reason it's the book of wisdom. You could pick out any verse and just speaks to you, and it affects some area of life. So the heart of the prudent getteth knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeketh knowledge. So you don't know what little thing that you hear or do or experience or act on can affect your life. That was part of the survey that we sent out, and we did a whole episode on the survey last year, which is still open, by the way. If you're a new listener and you don't know what we're talking about, there is a survey in which you can tell us what you think about friendship and all that kind of stuff. And we still check up on it every now and then. So if you're
it's in our link tree on Instagram.
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
It is. I can link it in the show notes too, if I remember it. But in one of those questions, so if you have not taken that survey, go ahead and pause right now and go take it so that your answers aren't skewed by what other people think. But one of those questions is, I am living a life. Well, it's a statement. And so from this statement, people are answering on a scale of never to all the time, and in between is not so much sometimes and most of the time. I am living a life that I know people would want to be friends with me. Kayla, when you hear that question, what is your answer for you?
Whoo, man. So
go ahead and put you on the spot on the microphone.
I think we talked about this in like episode 3 of season 1, but in surveys
it stands
like
out in
these,
our minds because we had to re-record it
because
of a microphone issue. So
that's why I know the exact episode.
That's why we have a little bit of ought in our hearts about the survey.
Yes. But yeah, I think I might have mentioned it in that episode. Surveys like this really stress me out. I cannot pick absolutes. Like,
I remember that,
very rarely will I ever pick never or always. I will always pick something in between. And I remember in this assessment. Well,
that's why they're there, because they'd be more accurate to
right.
what you feel.
Exactly. There was an assessment we had to take for premarital counseling, and that we went over with the people who were counseling us. And I remember Brother Philip going, okay, so Kayla, you never chose 1 or 5 the entire time. And Brett did. He chose 1 or 5. I was like, yeah, because that stresses me out.
Opinions.
But, and knowing Brett, because he's a lawyer, you would think he would be the one to be like, ooh, gray area. Yeah. Right. But no, that's me. I can't, because if I fully commit, then what if there's a caveat? I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, so my response to I'm living a life that I know people would want to be friends with me. I'm not going to say always. I'm also not going to say never. So I would say most of the time. I would consider myself a pretty good friend. There have been seasons of life where I've not been a very good friend. But yeah, in this season, I would say. Yeah. I would say so.
Most people agree with you. 45%, almost 46% have said most of the time they're living their life in a way that they know people would want to be friends with them. And I would say that's me too, because I try to do that, but I definitely know that there are sometimes that I don't present myself as approachable, or I don't present myself as someone who people would want to be friends with. I would hope that my character precedes me, like my reputation precedes me, like, yeah, she's a great friend, even if in the moment it doesn't appear that way. But the interesting thing about this survey is that it was completely anonymous. So it is completely anonymous still to this day. Like, if you take it, we won't know who it is unless you put in the short answer, this is, and say your name. But because people have the freedom to feel completely honest, I would hope that they do choose their gut reaction. So even if it is one of those extremes, one end or the other, that they would do it. And in this case, 29% of people said that they all the time believe that they are living a life that they know without a shadow of a doubt people would want to be friends with them. That sounds exhausting.
Right. That sounds like perfection.
That sounds like... And, I don't fault them for choosing that, because that's what they truly believe. But I'm also like, that it sounds exhausting. It sounds like you, even on days that you don't feel like you want to be around people or whatever, you're putting on a front in order to make other people feel that they can approach you. Mm-hmm. Right. If that's how you thrive, more power to you. I'm happy to hear that. That's great. And we are going to get into the ripple effect, so calm down. We're going to get there. But... the next thing, like I said, 46% most of the time, no, that was the alternate. And sometimes, 15% of the people said sometimes, so the middle of the road. And then we have 7% of people who said not so much. They know that their actions and behaviors do not make them friendly, do not make them, people think that they could be friends with them. And 2% said never. They said, I actively choose to live a life in which I know people will not want to be friends with.
So maybe they were taking this survey to change that?
Hopefully. I mean, I really wanted to know. Like, that's why I put those on there. Because, hey, I do not fault you for choosing that. Yeah. But it's going to make me chuckle, because saying never makes me think that is a conscious choice that you choose to live your life in a way that you are purposefully unapproachable.
You know what? There are some people like that. Purposefully unapproachable.
But do you think that those people who are like that, by and large, want to be like that? Or they just can't find their way out of that?
Probably they're like the Grinch.
They're just waiting for a situation for their hearts to grow 3 sizes.
Yes, in their heart of hearts, they do want to.
I can't cancel that.
I can't cancel that again.
Yeah, so got distracted by the Grinch. Hold on, I'm about to lose it. 4 o'clock. Solve world hunger. Tell no one. Okay. Anyway, so the Grinch. But, okay, let's get back to where we were. All of these percentages, no matter where you fall on the scale, is very interesting to me. Both, just as someone who likes numbers, and I wouldn't go so far to say that I'm a numbers nerd, but I'm a numbers... interested person. Yeah, I like to see what the correlations are between people. Does that make me a numbers nerd? Maybe. I don't know. You should talk to my sister. But basically what I was getting at with making that point of bringing up those percentages is that all of those people, however they're choosing to live their life, whether to have people want to be friends with them or not, are making decisions in their life that's going to affect whether or not they have friends in the future.
Mm-hmm.
The people who are living all the time so that they know people are going to want to be friends with them. Are they going, first of all, is it truly genuine? Are they at any point putting on a front? And is that sustainable?
Mm-hmm.
Are they eventually going to get to a point where they're exhausted and they're sick of doing that, and then they lose friends because it seems like it's a change, but it's really how they felt all the time? Are these people who just said all the time because they knew that I'd be looking at this, and subconsciously they wanted it to seem like they were all the time good friends?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things that can go into it. But in the ripple effect philosophy, so if you think about this as imagery, you take a stone into a lake, or mostly a lake. The ocean is, huge, and you could do it there too, but there's not a ton of stones on the sand. You go to a lake, you pick up a stone, and you drop it in the water. Mm-hmm. You got the klunk, klunk, and it blunk, 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 blunk. And then you have the rings that out. Well, the energy caused by the rock falling into the water is not just dunk and then the splash and then it's over.
Mm-hmm.
There is a physical ring of water that is disturbed around it, and the energy just pushes it out. That's the physical representation of it. And if you're listening right now, you're like, obviously, and I know where you're going with this. If I know that, you're saying our decision to affect, bear with me. You might hear something that resonates. But the point is, those small actions, whether friendship, relationship, personal, whatever it may be, will lead to wide-reaching impacts.
Yes.
Okay. It might seem like the rock that splashed in the water, it only has a 5-foot impact, right? The rings only go out so far before they disappear into the water. But if you think about taking the small step of befriending someone, because it is small, like, not even befriending them, just making them an acquaintance on the bottom tier of your friendship pyramid, not even with the intention of them growing, just making them
being
your friend,
friendly, yeah.
Making an acquaintance with someone. You are, over time, theoretically, the more time you spend with them, the closer proximity you are, the more that they will move up your pyramid, right? Mm-hmm. That's the formula, if you will. The time spent and desire to spend time with a person. So you make this small decision to introduce someone into your life, not knowing the impact that they'll have on you, right? I don't think that a lot of people, when they make an acquaintance, think, okay, all right, let's start the clock. 5 years. They're going to be my maid of honor.
Right.
Who thinks like that? I don't think like that. If you think like that, please reach out to us, because I would love to talk to you.
Well, you weren't thinking in the corn maze, oh, they're going to be my besties for life.
When we rescheduled with these other girls because the other ones canceled, I wasn't thinking, all right, I'm going to go to their houseboat this weekend. In
right?
11 years, we're going to be that is not what I was thinking. So the actions of befriending someone then has led to something absolutely beautiful. And I didn't do it on my own. I didn't just say, okay, you and you, we're going to be friends. Let's go. I mean, it kind of seems that way just because how unfolded. But it took, like we talked about in our season finale, it took Carla Adair facilitating it at her house. It took those other girls canceling it. Those are ripple effects.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That is the stone dropping in the water. If those other two girls had not canceled, the small act of, we can't make it, would we have you know what I mean?
Right.
It was that night that launched us into who we are. One text, oh, we can't make it tonight, I'm so sorry. It wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't like a oh, how could they do this to us? It was like, oh, life happens.
Right.
So that tiny, seemingly at that time, rock just bloop, and now look at us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's wild to me. And I don't think that we think about that as a concept a whole lot, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this happens with everything in life. Relationships, work, occupation. I never saw myself as a graphic designer. It was not like a little kid dream of mine. I just started doing screen team at church. My brother-in-law took me out to coffee one morning and asked me if I would take over screen one day. I haven't taken it over yet, but I'm still on the team. And so that just kind of came about. Then I started doing screen at church, and I was like, okay, our title slides are really boring. I'd like to like spruce them up a little bit, but I'd never touched Photoshop or Canva.
I didn't realize it was that recent. That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah, in 2018. Yeah. So I had never touched anything like that. So I was like, how can I make these title slides better? And he's like, well, reach out to so-and-so in the church and they'll get you on the graphics team. So I reached out to this person. I might as well just name them. Jake Terrazas. He's been one of my best mentors for graphic design. And he gave me
really good.
free classes every week on Zoom, just teaching me the ins and outs of Photoshop and design and art. So that was really cool. And now I do it as a job.
That's
I get
awesome.
paid for it.
And another thing is, so taking Jake's actions into consideration, he caused a ripple effect by teaching you, who now puts it out into different capacities, your job, your side hustles that you do with the different accounts and whatever, even Friendeavor, like, you know, and then I would imagine, not to put you on the spot, but you would sometime, with the opportunity presented itself, you would pay that forward.
Yeah.
If you could, you know, and teach another kid how to do it, and then just ripple out to the next generation. That's a great example of that. While we're on the topic of careers, this is more of the mentality of planting a seed rather than the stone in the water. It's, you know, planted a seed and it can lie dormant for years, that kind of thing. So when I was like, I don't know, 14 or something, my grandma, my mom's mom, actually, she came up last week, and so now she's coming up again. I feel like I need to clarify. Kayla was judging me a little bit for saying that she was a negative person. She was, but she was still a good grandma. Like, she wasn't all the time storm clouds, but if the opportunity presented herself, she would choose the negative path. Anyways, we were at her house, and she wanted me to fix... Oh, she had just gotten a new phone. Classic granddaughter, grandma story, and she needed me to teach her how to use it. And I used an analogy while I was teaching her about a faucet. And it stands out so clearly to me because of what happened after. So I was telling her the difference between Wi-Fi and her 3G. It was like 3G or 4G back there. And I used the analogy of the faucet. I was like, when you run out of data, it's going to go down to like if you have like a faucet dripping, right? You could just like drip, drip, drip. But if you tag it into your Wi-Fi, it's like the faucet goes and like water pours out. And it made her understand that. And she was like, Danielle, you should consider being a teacher. She's like, that was really good. That was really good. And I laughed and I was like, haha, no, I have other plans with my life. I didn't have any other plans. I mean, I did. I knew what I wanted to do at that time, but I was like, no, I'm never going to be a teacher. That would be horrible.
Wow.
So the seed was planted. I didn't even realize it was being planted then. Fast forward several years. I am 20 and I don't really know what to do with my life, and I'm working a horrible job. I mean, it wasn't like horrible, but it was not great. Temporary job at an insurance company, and it was just a temporary, so they could have let me go at any time, and they chose to let me go after like 10 months. And so I'm shocked. I'm like, oh my gosh, I go to making good amount of money to zero money, and I'm 20. Like, I'm not just a kid anymore. I got to figure this out. And that was in October. In December, I go to a baby shower. No, go to a bridal shower. End up meeting someone there who goes to our church. And she's like, she's like, man, for some reason I thought you needed a job. One just closed that I think you would have been good at. And I was like, no, I do need a job. I was like, what do you mean? I do need a job. What are you talking about? She's like, oh, the posting just closed. It's for a librarian at my school. Oh, and I was like, oh, would that be, like, tell me. And she's like, well, it's closed. And she's like, but you know what? Let me talk to my boss, see if we can get it reopened. They reopened the whole job for me, held another round of interviews with a bunch of candidates, all to hire me.
I did not know that part.
Yeah, that ended up, so that ripple effect of just going to a bridal shower. So there had been a seed planted a long time ago, went to a bridal shower, randomly, like, talked to this woman who I knew, but I didn't, like, know, you know? And she dropped the rock of saying, oh, yeah, And the effect happened a lot longer before I got there. Like, the woman had to quit the job and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is one decision leads to another. 5 years in that job, I'm like, you know what? I think I'd be a good teacher. I remember what my grandma said when I was like 14. Now I have a master's degree in teaching, and that's what I do.
Wow.
Ripple effect. Yeah. And when you hear ripple effect, like I said, you think of the analogy, oh yeah, the rings just go on. Yeah, we get that. That's an old philosophy. We get that. But when you hear actual stories of it, I think that it kind of might change one's perspective about it.
I love that.
Okay, so what can you take away from our personal life anecdotes? Listen, you can't judge us for sharing stories about ourselves, because in the intro, which you probably skip, and I don't blame you, I was sick when we recorded that and I sound a little stuffed up, but in that intro we say, join us each week as we talk about personal anecdotes and advice and all that stuff. So this is what you came for. You signed up for it. Anyway, so what does this mean going forward for you? You've heard our stories, and how does it affect you? Well, you have to keep the core principles in mind. Once you're aware of this philosophy, mindfulness and intentionality are what you should have kind of floating around in your mind. You don't have to wake up every morning and be like, zip, okay, mindfulness, what am I going to do today that is going to affect me in the next 10 years? You know, it doesn't have to be robotic, it doesn't have to be whatever, but if you can grasp these concepts, these like core concepts of this, then it will kind of become a part of your life, and then you don't have to think about it so much. It'll just, you know how like goodness and mercy follows you all the days of your life. If you make it so that mindfulness and intentionality are part of your everyday, then you won't even have to think about it anymore, and you'll just like, it's kind of like discernment. God will nudge you, and then once you're sensitive to hearing his voice, you're like, oh, he's calling me. He wants me to do something right now. So both spiritually and physically, when you feel the mindfulness and intentionality, like, hey, be aware of that, it will affect you in a positive way. Just being aware of how important it is to know the impact of small actions. And I just want to encourage you, like, to act with honesty. Like, choose to actively pursue a character of integrity. Actively choose to be compassionate. What's the story of, it's an old fable, the mouse and the lion. Have you ever heard that story? So a mouse goes into a cave, and the lion slaps his paw down on him. He's going to eat him. And the mouse is like, no, please don't, let me go. I promise to repay you someday. And the lion's like, okay, yeah, what you going to do to repay me? Like, there's nothing you can do. I'm hungry. I'm going to eat you. And the mouse is like, no, I will. I'll make it up for you. And so the lion lets him go. He has compassion on the lion, and then lets the mouse go. Later on, the lion is walking through the forest, jungle, whatever, lions, wherever they live, and gets trapped in a hunter's net and gets lifted up into the air in a net hung by a tree. Along comes the mouse. The mouse runs up the tree, gnaws off the net, and saves the lion. So that's a fable, but the whole point of fable is to teach a lesson. So the lion in this fable chooses to act with compassion, thinking in the moment, thinks this mouse can never do anything for me. So when you act as a human with integrity and compassion, intentionally, not even expecting it to come back, just knowing that it could, what kind of doors can open for you?
Right.
Not only is a compassionate person someone who can, I mean, the world calls it karma, we call it compassion and mercy, you know, and just the goodness of God. But not expecting it to come back to you, but knowing that God will bless you.
Yes.
Right? Exactly. It's like the guy who, the parable of the person who had a debt and the guy forgave him, but then he had someone had a debt towards him, and he goes like, you owe me money, you gotta pay me, I'm gonna imprison you until you do. And then the guy with the original, who had the original mercy, was like, no, I showed you mercy, how could you not show him? It's the same thing. You're not expecting someone to do anything in return for you, but that you know that it could. And then going into the humanity interconnectedness, that's a huge word, aspect. How many letters is that? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's a lot of, that's like almost 20 letters.
We have a visitor.
Do we?
She was waving in the window.
Kara? Oh my gosh. Thank God I would have like jumped out of my seat if she would have come to this other window. While I'm counting the letters in interconnectedness, Kara decides to pop up in my door. Okay. Where was I? Interconnectedness. So not only do we have compassion and all that stuff, and we're concerned about our own ripple, there are rocks being dropped all around you. There are splashes being made all around you. And the beauty of multiple ripples coming together and causing an effect that you never could have seen possible. You see this all the time. Whether you realize it or not, you see it all the time. Every decision that every person has made that has led them to the Rock Church has created the church that it is today.
Yeah. So
it
true.
is different than the church it was 5 years ago. It's different than the church it will be in 5 years. Because of all the little decisions of who is there right now. That's why they say, and I feel like I've just been rambling, so Kayla, interrupt if you have something to say. But that's why they say you should never take a service for granted, because there will never be the exact same parameters, the exact same mentality, the exact same flow. Even though he's the same God yesterday and today forever, our humanity dictates how we receive that and how it flows. So that's why it's so important, the intentionality of knowing that this day is not going to be like any other day.
Yes.
This service is not going to be like any other service. This ripple and their ripple could connect now that it will never happen again. So appreciating the fact of what you have today, and knowing that you might not have it tomorrow, but yet the decision that you make today will affect you tomorrow. Like it's philosophy. Philosophy is loaded.
Yeah.
But if you can kind of just get it in bits and pieces, hopefully it would help us become better people.
Yes.
And that's
absolutely.
our goal, right? And Kayla, I don't think we could do this topic justice without talking about the flip side as well. That the choices you make today, not only can they have beautiful, lasting, wonderful effects, but a bad choice you make today could have a not so positive effect in the future.
Right. Yeah. I was just teaching a teen girls class a couple weeks ago, and I never got to touch on this, but in my notes for the class, I wrote how small decisions affect your future. And I said choices impact your values impact the crowd you run with, and the crowd you run with impacts your spouse, your choice of spouse. So that's going all the way back to little decisions that you're making today are affecting your choice of spouse for the future. And that could make your life 10 times more wonderful, or it could absolutely destroy not your entire life, because there's
definitely make it more
restoration
difficult.
But yeah.
Did they receive that?
I never touched on it.
Oh, okay.
I put it in my notes
that's
though.
That's a good lesson.
Yeah.
So ye who are unmarried, hear this, because that's very true.
Yeah.
Say that one more time. What would the path was?
Your decisions impact your values impact the crowd you run with, and the crowd you run with impacts your choice of spouse.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So people have debates about, whether or not there's one soulmate in your life and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not going to get into that. That's top of the pyramid stuff. But going down the steps into that, if you, I don't want to over spiritualize this, but I think you understand what I'm saying. If you hate the things that God hates, you're not going to run with the crowd that's okay with the things that God hates.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If you love the things that God loves, you're not going to be exposed to other people who don't entertain that. Like, the Holy Ghost that lives within you is not going to allow you to be in those situations. And not because it's the judge that tells you, no, you don't get to go there, or the mean parent that's like, you're grounded. No, you won't want to. Your desires change, your values change. And so don't fight that. You be okay with that, accept it, and love that you have that comforter, and just see how it ripples out in the future. Because the small things, I mean, everything from your health, dietary stuff, like you start eating poorly when you're 10 or 12 or whatever, and then you just progressively get to that point, whereas good habits develop into better habits. And I'm not,
Yeah.
it's just one example.
Right.
But you never hear of a kid who woke up one day and said, you know what, I want to try crack cocaine.
Right.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
One of my students is not going to roll out of bed tomorrow and just, crack their knuckles and be like, okay, I'm going to go become a drug dealer. Like, that's not how that works. It's one little thing.
Yeah.
And then it's another thing. And that third thing, which would have seemed like a big deal when they were 12, but doesn't seem like a big deal when they were 15, is because all the other stuff got to be okay when they were younger.
Exactly.
So when your pastor or your parents or even your spouse presents something to you as, hey, I don't think we should cross this line, I don't think we should go any farther, that's not something to fight. Because I think it's Brother Booker who has a book, What a Difference a Line Can Make. Yeah, the cows could go there is a patch of grass 20 feet beyond the fence, but 21 feet beyond the fence is a cliff.
Yes. Right. So
why not just protect the cattle a little bit closer to home? And I don't see the cows pitching a fit that they can't get closer to the cliff. Like, be okay with that. And if it's something that's truly unreasonable, then talk to the person who's presenting this to you and say, this is what I feel. You might get a better perspective about it or whatever. But that ripple effect can have lasting impacts positively and negatively. So, again, what does this mean for you? Thoughtful decision making, intentionality of mindfulness and integrity, actively choosing to be kind. Again, going back to the secular phrase of karma, or what goes around comes around. Intentional kindness. I think I've said before, Kayla's family is so just intrinsically kind, but if someone had not chosen that at some point, it would not be in this generation, and it won't be in the next generation. Someone chose to have intentional kindness and to think positively of people, and instill that in Kayla and instill that in her siblings, and therefore will be instilled in the next generation as well. It was an intentional choice to be kind. And just realize that you have a powerful effect, even though it might seem like there's nothing that you can do. I love this episode because it's been very story-timey, but another one comes to mind. Pastor goes to Roatan, gets into one cab. Well, he got into a lot of cabs, but in this instance, got into one, witnessed to the guy, and now there is a thriving revival church on that island.
Yeah.
What if he had not
his
said
son was on my
anything?
ITW.
What?
His son was on my ITW.
Oh, really?
In Roatan. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. What if he had just said, no, I can't affect any change here. This is an island in the middle of the Caribbean. There's nothing. I have a church in Elk Grove. This is not my, I just want to be here. I just want to be on vacation. I don't want to talk to anybody. Just take me to where I want to go. What if he had been like that?
Right.
The individual has power. It's not because he was some, he's Miles Young, he can do that kind of stuff. That guy didn't know who Miles Young was. He was a cab driver. Like, he doesn't know all of his customers. Right. And so to think of yourself of, I'm just Joe Schmo or Jane Schmain and I can't do anything. No, you have such an unbelievable, untapped impact within you. So use it wisely. Yeah. Be aware, be intentional, be consistent, be responsible. Take responsibility on creating a better future for you and your future spouse and your future kids and the generations that will come after you. Yeah. Be smart about it. Be intentional. So the ripple effect, that is hopefully maybe you saw a new perspective on it. I don't know if we did it justice.
That was very in-depth.
Thanks. But if you are one who wants change, start with a small step. I don't care what kind of change it is. You don't have to wake up overnight and be like, okay, I am different. Today, I am going to be completely different than I was yesterday, and it's going to be for the better. Well, more than likely that you will just kind of fizzle out on that plan. So change one thing. Yeah. Smile at one person. If you're the 2% that's never living their life in a way that people would want to be friends with you, what is one small thing you can do?
Small changes, to
want to to make people want to be friends with you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be a big operation.
Yeah.
And pray. Let God help you with that.
Right.
Thank you so much for stopping by Friendeavor this week. Season 2 is off and running. This is episode 3. We got some great things coming up for you this season. I am in the process of scheduling some interviews, so hopefully we'll get those out to you with some amazing people. And yeah, thank you so much for stopping by this week. We'll see you next time.
See you next week.